После осмотра практически пустых помещений дворца Худаярхана в Коканде сотрудник, гид задал нашей группе вопрос, что можно сделать, чтобы оживить этот музей. Он бесплатен для посещения. Тут в основном сюда приходят посетители из Коканда, может быть, из соседних регионов. Понятно, что когда сюда приезжают иностранные гости, они тоже приходят, бегло осмотрят, но в музее не задерживаются. При всем при том, что здесь есть уникальные объекты и зодчества, и орнамента. Все довольно-таки неплохо реконструировано. И вот давайте послушаем, что наши эксперты ответили сотрудникам музея и хокиму области по развитию в ответ, на вот этот вопрос, что можно сделать, чтобы это здание стало представлять интерес для туристов и именно приносить какую-то прибыль, а не просто быть объектом культурного наследия, конечно, безусловно, присутствующим во всех каталогах, но при этом не зарабатывающего, не приносящего в бюджет никаких доходов.
To really keep them here. And the main thing, well, there were a number of things. One, we got a top curator. It badly needs heavily curating as to make sense out of movement of people and flow of people through the museum. Additional permanent exhibits celebrating the Kokand region, or Kokand in a coherent, interpreted way, curated way. So that it's not sort of all over the place, rushing from this room to that room to this room to that room, and a curator will understand the evolutionary aspects of how that is presented and interpreted. A coffee shop, somewhere for people to stop. You know, the truism in tourism: if you give people a reason to stop, they will, and they'll spend money. So something like you could redesign the coffee shop in a mid-18th century style and have people in local costume and that sort of thing to give some air of authenticity about it without it getting horrible. But somewhere for them to stop and discuss, really well-trained guides like yourself to go through more modern interpretative aspects, immersion through virtual reality, maybe creating a scene from these different times in history. These sort of things are all curatorial things that do cost money, of course, but it actually creates a destination in its own right for people to come here and have a long time here.
I don't know if you have been to India, but a good place to go and to have a look is Rajasthan in India, like Udaipur. It's the same situation. The Maharajas were given, when the government took over the states of the Rajas, they were given the palaces as, you can keep that, and we take. The rest comes under the government. But the Maharaj of Udaipur, as an example, and also in Jaipur and so on, they've used their palaces and turned them into a museum. Really nice. The Udaipur one, I think, is the best. But it's very well furnished with, and as Peter says, it is a flow of people. It's very well managed. And it is well furnished with different sections of the way the family used to live in those times, and the whole environment of interaction with the people, hunting, things like that. Okay, so that's all in there. So I think maybe it's a good thing maybe just to have a look at, go and Google Udaipur, Maharaja of Udaipur Museum. He also added a hotel to, so he had two buildings. He had the palace and I think two palaces, or one palace divided in two. So one is the museum part, and it's very much like this. It's got open spaces, gardens, as Peter says. There's a coffee shop around, but the other part he turned into a hotel, a boutique hotel, very upmarket. Of course, Udaipur is a very visited place. I mean, it's a very well-known place. So it has a lake and it's got beautiful. But so people go there from all over the world and go and stay in the palace, in his palace, and but the furniture, everything, it's really nicely done. So it's a good idea but you'd have to really invest quite a lot in it and make it something special.
And a lot of planning with curators and so forth before you even start. But
they can do it. I mean,
it's possible to do. It's been done many times before, and it's kept as a, even the little things like museums, the old palaces that have been turned into museums that I've seen, for example, where you go into a room, you follow a certain pathway. And the pathway shows the evolution of history and how people occupied that palace during that time. And even to a point where you would go into a room, there's a cord, you can only go so far, but the room is set up as if somebody is still living there. Right? Even with the glasses on the desk and the sherry glass still half full of sherry. This sort of thing. So it actually feels like a living museum, even though it's what we say static. It's still. But they, as Mike said, a lot of the way in which these things need to make money. Otherwise, you need to find a budget to subsidize it, right? And so, therefore, there needs to be profit centres, like a ticketing centre, like replicas of things to be sold in the shop. Replicas of things that are in the museum. There needs to be investment in a coffee shop, toilets, these sort of things. It's a big job, but for something this special, this historic, then there's the market side. Where's the market going to come from? So that would need some form of study as to what the demand is, where are these people going to come from, how to attract them from Fergana, for example, or Nalingana, or Andijan, or Tashkent. I don't think someone's going to come from Tashkent all the way here just to stay here, but they might come to Fergana and the valley for other things and include this. If there was maybe a really nice small boutique style hotel in the middle of a beautiful field with a lake and so forth, not so far away. To give people a destination to come to and then give them really good things to do. Because if there's not things to do, they won't come.
It's called City Palace Museum. But that's the Udaipur. The City Palace Museum of Udaipur. And this place has an amazing facade. I mean, coming onto the building, that alone is enough for people.
Stunning.
But you can maybe have a look at how they because they are managing this as a profit center. They're making a lot of money out of it, and they're keeping. But they've got they've got replicas of things from the old times.
And one of the keys to this as well is the tourism aspect of tourism marketing, because this is on a tourism circuit. The tour operators program. They just don't wait for accidental visitors. They do deals with tour operators. So when they're on their circuit of Rajasthan or wherever, they include 2 nights or whatever there. So it's a big job, but it's but this is worthwhile.
That's why 3 days before I told you, our Fergana region, 563,000 people is coming, and 61,000 people is outside. This one, 40% is for Kokand. That's why I want to first, in my mind, we are think about the museum becoming normality after people interested, you know. That's why you say this one. Same, we have think also about coffee shop and museum culture, and you can see and that portrait maybe can buy auction also available directly. And
it needs a lot of planning before you start, and you can't just guess. You can't guess, because then you waste money, and you might end up with something not right. So,
there are companies that specialize in this, you know, and it would be worth, if you really want to do it, it would be worth to get someone who is a specialist in this to come and advise you, and also how to get, you know, additional furniture and things from that era. Maybe there are things in other places, other museums around this area where you can bring in some more.
to make it feel like it was when people were living here full time. This is like we went to the room of the what's the name of the gentleman? The king?
Hudaярхана.
We went to the room of the Khan, and it's just an empty room with a chair. Right? It doesn't look like anybody lives there. Whereas the best museum places, palaces that I've been to, it actually looks as if someone is still living there. All their books, all their writing materials, their telephone, everything is all still there. Everything. And we visitors only have a small passageway with a rope separating us from that space. You know, so we can actually walk through history and see how history evolved in that building. And it's and this is why the curator needs to be, like Mike says, to get these people, because it leads, it's a very, it's a contrived, how do you say contrived? And it's a very carefully planned thing. When you arrive, everybody follows a certain pathway, which leads the evolution. And strangely enough, the pathway, almost to the end, is in the museum shop, and you cannot get out of the building without going through the cafe. Right? So it's just a really carefully planned thing, and that's why you need a real expert to do it. And it's what we did in Nairobi as well. You know, you had to follow a certain pathway, and the in gate was different from the out gate, and the out gate was on the other side of the coffee shop. You know, so it's a science. It's a science.
Right.
A temporary exhibit space and a permanent space. So it's the same thing. Give people a reason to come. You know, if somebody's interested in silk weaving and so forth, and you on your events calendar, it says temporary exhibit, silk weavers and artists these months, June, July, August. And people, June, July, August, that's happening in that museum. So there we'll go. So you've got to give people a reason to come. A reason. Because give them a reason to come, they will, and they'll spend money. If they stop, they'll spend money.
Yes, of course, you are right.
Yeah.
Мы хотели, сейчас платформу создавали, чтобы каждый год у нас что происходит, там будет написано.
Это давно пора.
Да, уже все, да, и чтобы он правильно говорит насчет этого, да, если мы годовые планы не будем сделать, это естественно,
Операторы не могут продавать, не могут запланировать. Они будут знать, они планируют поездку согласно
как афиша.
Афиша фестивалей и ивентов, это надо сделать. Но это только маленькая часть того, вот, что было перечислено, да, для того, чтобы оживить, в частности, это место.
Только в Ферганской области, а мы вот как туристы едем, некоторое время у нас не будет какой-нибудь фестиваль или что-то не будет, а тот же день есть в этом, на Мангане, Андижане, чтобы годовой план создать, чтобы было у нас.
Караван должен идти у вас такой, фестивали, ивентов, оттуда сюда они едут и могут присоединяться.
And the thing is, you don't always only have to make it that Kokand. because this could become a centre for celebration of Central Asian cultures. Right? But you have to plan the events. That's where someone in your office or somewhere needs to be the event planner, or 2 or 3 people planning events 1 year, 18 months, 2 years out.
Yes.
And then you advertise them, you market them in the Central Asian region. You might invite people for a temporary exhibit from a neighbouring country to celebrate their culture in your region. I mean, think wide. If you only think Kokand, it gets a bit hard to keep on doing new stuff.
Yes.
The whole calendar and all data must be fixed and published 1 year in advance.